Cops of Reddit. What's the stupidest thing or crime someone did right in front of you? I worked as a small-town sheriff's deputy in a rural country. One night, I was running code to a domestic disturbance at a home a couple miles away. I was cresting a hill and noticed a pair of headlights in my lane of travel on a 2-lane road. I pulled up and noticed a beat-up old yellow pickup truck with the driver's side door open facing me and blocking the road. I then noticed a disheveled-looking man standing in the ditch, sheepishly holding an obviously upset raccoon by the tail. I stepped out of the car and yelled to the man politely, inquiring as to what was happening. He shrugged his shoulders and yelled, "Sorry, forensic Sasquatch," before pitching the raccoon into the bushes. I didn't have time to ask questions, but told him to move the car out of the way so I could get to my domestic. Months later, I ran into the gentleman in town, and he introduced himself as the raccoon guy. I asked him what had happened, and he told me, I was driving along and saw 2 raccoons trying to get into the same culvert, and they got stuck. I told myself, I'll bet I could grab one of them if I tried, and went and grabbed him by the tail. Ooh, boy, was he sure mad. I asked him what he was planning to do with the raccoon, and he just shrugged and gave me a quizzical look. My roommate was a cop. We were walking home after work. I passed right by the station on my way home, and she'd usually join me. She was still in uniform, badge and all. We passed by a liquor store, and a group of kids surrounded us and asked us to buy them liquor. She said, "How old are you?" They said, 16. That's why we can't buy it ourselves. She asked them, after she arrested them, why they'd approach a uniformed police officer of all people. Their answer, "We didn't think you were a real cop because you're a woman." Wow! So these children must be very educated. Someone please cue the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song as they're all just being arrested and handcuffed behind them. Bum, bum, bum. You kids are dumb and you're going to jail. You're going to be in juvie with the record. Oh, geez. So many. Probably the guy who asked me how much illegal substances I wanted to buy. I was in full uniform, but he was looking down, counting the rocks in his palm at night. I laughed and said, "I'll take all of it." He said, "That's going to be like $50 then," as he looked up at me. Realizing the error in his ways upon seeing me, he ate them all. He got out of going to jail right then, but got a warrant for destroying evidence and arrived to the hospital to have his stomach pumped. So, kind of worth it for him, I guess. We just went through this literally last time. Bum, bum, bum. You're not going to jail, but you're going to go in the hospital having your stomach pumped because you are stupid. Pardon my Joker laugh there. Driving down a 2-way road, 1 lane each way, car up ahead of me on my lane makes a U-turn from the curb. He was parked. Then proceeds to swerve towards my lane, driving on the wrong side of the road. I slow down. He honks at me as if I'm in his way. He swerves back to his lane and keeps driving. I stop him, ultimately, after he hit the curb trying to pull over. Yup, guess who got a DUI? Not a cop, but I was behind the Dumbo who did it in front of the cop. Near my mom's house is a bunch of horse property, so it's normal to see guys go by on their horses. I was behind a black SUV and see a police car parked facing the street. The Dumbo in the SUV slowed down just to veer closer and rev his engine at the horses. One was calm, but the other was freaking out. The cop's sirens came on so fast, it surprised me. Guy got his horse under control, and the Dumbo in the SUV got pulled over. I deal with stupid every day at work, but here's one that I always like to tell. Back when I was working gang units, we were in a residential neighborhood in East LA at night. We hear a car do a huge, long burnout. It sounded really close. We turn off our lights and wait for some weapon fire, but never heard any. Just then, a car goes flying by us. We turn on the lights and go after him. He pulls over right away and starts apologizing to us, saying that his foot slipped off the clutch. Yeah, right. A burnout that long and your foot slipped? Turns out, he just broken up with his girlfriend and he went to her house to do the burnout in front of it. Now, the interesting thing about working gangs is we don't do traffic or answer calls unless it is gang-related. We muck with gang members. But we had to stop because of what he did in the neighborhood we were in. Since this guy wasn't a gang member, we were just going to let him go. We hadn't even run his license or even asked for it yet. Now here is where it gets stupid. He looks at us and says, "Can I ask you something before you take me to jail?" My partner and I look at each other, ask him for his ID, and run it. Turns out, he had a $15,000 warrant for his arrest. He was seconds away from going home and ended up in jail that night. Funny thing is, I don't think he ever asked the question. I was military police, and this happened back in 2012. I was doing a routine building check on one of the schools on base. Due to our security posture that day, I was in full battle rattle and had my piece with me at 6'2" and 220 pounds. I am an enormous person with all that body armor and such on. I turn the corner to check the backside of the school and see two teenagers sitting on a picnic table outside one of the doors. Mind you, this is a Saturday, so there's nobody in the building. The kid sees me, a giant wall of weaponry, and immediately throws something under the little PE shed. My first thought was the leaf. We're on a military base, you can't have that crap. So I asked the kid what he just threw, and he immediately starts crying. The girl he was with had such a bewildered look in her face at the sight of him breaking down like that. Admittedly, I was also a bit surprised. The girl was 16 and the guy was 15. She told me that it was just a cigarette, so I made the boy fish it out from under the shed. Sure enough, it was just a Camel Crush cig. Not even broken yet. "Are your parents home?" I asked the boy. He shook his head. You live on base, right? Go smoke these in your dad's garage. It's Saturday anyway. Why are you here in school property? I'm not going to arrest you." Suddenly he stopped crying and started praising me for being the coolest cop ever and thanking me for not bringing him in. As if smoking a cig was a huge deal on a military base full of nuclear weapons. Later that day, coincidentally, also on school building check, I found two 14-year-old boys sitting against the wall eating honeysuckle flower petals. So, that was weird. I was out at a client's site to burn some camera footage for the police, and due to the slow DVD burner, I found myself outside having a smoke break with the detective that came to collect it. We were shooting the crap back and forth about the weather when a homeless guy walked up and asked for a light. Duct tape jacket and shoes? Check. Overpowering smell of mold, waste, and burning tires? Check. While I was doing the mental math of, is this guy likely to try a runner with my Zippo in front of a cop? The detective produced a book of matches and told him to keep them. The homeless guy walked 10 feet away to an illegally parked Crown Vic belonging to the cop, sat on the hood, and started emptying his pockets. An illegal substance pipe, 2 Bic lighters, 1 crushed pack of illegal substances, and a handful of plastic baggies. Detective elbowing me and whispering, "He's lucky I have places to be." Finally, the guy found what he was looking for, a pathetic little pinner of an herbal leaf, wedged in the cigarette pack and lit up using one of the lighters. Detective still whispering, "Bet he doesn't even share." I let out a snort, which the homeless guy apparently didn't appreciate. He looked straight at me, then straight at the cop, and the flash would have lost to this 90-pound white dude in duct tape shoes. He was half a block away and around the corner before his rolled-up leaf stopped rolling around on the sidewalk. I was training a rookie. We were the same unit with the same designator, a radio call sign. I called dispatch my police radio. 240 Alpha is what I said, indicating that we, 240 Alpha, were calling dispatch. My rookie was standing directly next to me, like right beside me. He got on the radio and said, 240 Alpha, go ahead. Thinking the dispatcher was calling him. In short, he answered himself on the radio. The dispatcher was confused. I wonder how long they kept him like that after he said what he said. I just want to know if they were just staring at him the whole while. "Oh boy, this isn't good. Dispatcher's gone quiet. What do we do, sir?" "I don't know. Why don't you ask him again? And just may I remind you, do you see this piece of paper?" "Yeah." What does it say right there?" 240 Alpha. Yeah, I know." "Uh-huh. And do you see the names beneath that?" "Well, hey, wait a minute, that's my name." "Oh, that's my name." "Yeah, that's your name." My agency is the primary agency responsible for boat patrol in my area. One July weekend, my partner and I are just beginning an afternoon shift on the water when another boater flags us down. We make our way over, expecting them to be having mechanical trouble or something. Nope. 2 guys on board, and the operator tells us he wants us to write him a ticket for his expired registration. Says he was just given a warning last weekend and knew we'd catch him anyway. So, might as well get over with. Pretty good, right? Not done. Eventually, we put our boat on the lift and get off the water to grab dinner. While eating, we get a call from dispatch that a boater had just called in a complaint about another boat that was operating dangerously and nearly caused an accident. We make our way back there, and sure enough, it's the boat from earlier. Turns out they had asked us to write them a ticket earlier because they thought that would keep us from stopping them later after they had gotten intoxicated. Didn't want that OWI. And still not done. This time, when we stop them, there is an additional person on board, an intoxicated girl that they allow to operate their boat. We check her ID, says she's 22, but can't get a return on it. It's fake. She's underage, and they knew it. Now she's going to jail for OWI, among other things, and they are getting charged with furnishing alcohol to a minor. Good thing they got that registration ticket out of the way earlier. I am completely unsurprised. Just about every boater at the marina I live near are alcoholics that do stupid crap just like this. My mother does security at an abandoned waterfront hotel, and every single freaking time she has to tell half those boaters, abandoned private property for your own safety, there's no trespassing, even though they've been there 15 times before just because they were too crap-faced last time to remember. And every time they're like, "What? Really? No way!" Like they can't believe the place is dangerous, even though the place is literally falling in on itself. There was this one guy who would stand on property and talk to her for 5 to 15 minutes, despite being told to leave and getting no reception from her. Then she called 911 after watching him book it from one of the rooms and finding a lab inside. Since she knew him, she was able to point to which boat he lived in, and he was getting arrested. He was like, "But I thought we were cool!" No, not even a little bit. Especially not cover up your illegal substance lab and probably become a felon in the process. Cool. Not a cop, but I saw it happen. I worked at a pretty busy nightclub and I watched a man pick up a woman's purse and walk away with it, out toward the parking lot. I saw him get into the passenger side of a vehicle by himself with the purse. I informed one of the off-duty police officers that we'd hire for security. The officer approached the vehicle and turns his flashlight on to catch the guy in the middle of taking a Snapchat video of himself chugging cheap vodka. Turns out, it was his cousin's purse and he needed the car keys. Stupid thing is it was dollar drink night, so how much was he really even saving? At least he got a good Snapchat out of it. Not a cop, but one day a massive water main burst in town and knocked out a couple streets. They put the cops in the ends to make sure nobody went down them. I was driving on a late afternoon and nobody else was really around, so pretty quiet. A young female cop was standing on the corner when over the road from her, some guy wandering down the street jumps up and starts swinging from the road closure sign and then pulled it down. The look on her face was one of pure, "Are you freaking kidding me right now?" Drove off before anything else happened, but I imagine that went poorly for him. 2 of my cousins are in their last year of cop school, so this summer they visited us from the city, and my dad took them fishing at the local lake. Some tourists in an RV were camped illegally. Doesn't bother us locals since it is out of the way, and hadn't had any luck fishing. They saw the catch my dad was carrying and asked if they could buy it. He said he could give it to them for free since we already had dinner. The tourists then gave my dad at least 5 big cartons of cigarettes as payment, and it is almost 100% smuggler goods from the border. My dad turned around and saw my 2 cousins literally sitting on the ground laughing. My partner was writing a ticket while I was documenting the stop via the patrol car's computer. We were on a city street next to a dramatically curved freeway off-ramp. We hear a tremendously loud screeching of brakes and a crashing sound that went on for a few seconds. We turn around and an SUV is on its roof. A tire is rolling across the intersection. We put it out over the air and run over. I looked inside my flashlight and there were multiple bodies all over the SUV. The fire department arrived and cut them out. They were all badly injured, and the driver was gone. Drive safe and pay attention, guys. There's a reason my partner was writing a freaking speeding ticket. Not a cop, but was a teenager who did something stupid. My buddy and I were at a stoplight in Princeton, New Jersey, one summer evening, and a town cop pulls up next to us, and for some unknown reason, I turned to my buddy and said, "Hey, Dave, put away that illegal substance pipe." Needless to say, we get immediately pulled over, and 3 more cops come rolling up. Not hard. We were also 50 yards from the police station. My buddy's car was registered in PA, so it was extra special for the cops. Neither my buddy nor the cops were terribly happy with me that day. After a thorough search of our persons and the car, where nothing illegal was found, the cop turns to me and says, "In the future, you should make sure your hummingbird rump doesn't get in the way of your crocodile mouth." I still laugh about it to this day. This was sometime around 1992. Opposite side of the story, officer pulled me over for driving through downtown with my brights on at 2 a.m. Intoxicated, I reach up to turn them off. As he told me why he pulled me over, I hit my windshield washers instead and sprayed him. He let me go, but he followed me as I drove around the block to drop off a buddy. Pulled in behind my friend's car so he can go home. He literally falls out of my car, beer in hand, 6-pack in the other. Lights come on, and the cop gets out and approaches us. Turns out my buddy was his training officer. Lets us both go with the promise that we aren't going anywhere until we sober up. I walked across the street to a friend's place. Cop leaves. Buddy takes off. Not really a cop, but maybe the cop who handled me will remember this story. Picked up Call of Duty at a GameStop, which was quite a drive away from me, and I wasn't too familiar with the area. The main street had a ton of traffic, so I decided to use side streets without looking at my GPS and ended up driving into what looked like an abandoned factory. Had no clue where I was, but I drove slowly past the open gate, which appeared unattended at the moment, and attempted to make a U-turn back out. Right as I'm about to exit, the cop holds out his hand and yells, "Hey you! What do you think you're doing?" I had no clue where I was, but I knew I mucked up. I rolled down the window, and the officer, in a very distinct Australian accent, says, "So, you enjoy running stop signs?" Had no clue there was a stop sign, but I didn't make a complete stop, so I just felt a huge fine coming my way. Told him I had no clue where I was and that I was really sorry. I just wanted to play some video games, man. He goes on to tell me that I was in the DWP, Department of Water and Power, and if I drove any further down, the guards were authorized to shoot me and that I could have been terminated since they were on red alert. After he asks me to pull over and check my license plate, make and model, etc., he tells me that they'll send my info to the FBI and look for any infractions or criminal records. None, by the way, but okay. Told him again I was sorry, and dude just kept saying, "Leave, leave, leave." I feel for the man because I'm sure he might have lost his job, but he let me go with a slap on the wrist and my body intact. Got extremely lucky, and now I always use GPS if I'm not at least 75% familiar with the area. Hope he's doing well, I owe him. But I swear something felt off, but in the heat of the moment I was honestly dumbfounded. He seemed more annoyed of me and couldn't wait for me to leave, but I don't really know what was happening on his end. That quote about getting shot at stuck with me as he explicitly told me I'd be terminated. And I don't usually hear cops talk about the FBI investigating, but this is government property, so, I just rolled with it. Also, that Call of Duty died out in a month. It was World War II. Overall, not a worthwhile game. What? That's what you got out of this whole scenario? You were threatened that you were going to get shot by a very angry Australian man who was dressed as a police officer and talking about the FBI and how you could have lost your life. But the last thing that you threw in there is, well, the worst part is that Call of Duty sucked. What? I would say I'm just glad that you're alive. As a teenager, my friend and I were jaywalking. We got to the center divider when a cop drove by, then made a U-turn, and we stupidly started running and ran up into a parking structure. We were on the roof when 3 cop cars came up, surrounded us with weapons drawn, telling us to put our hands up. They asked why we ran, and we said we didn't know, which we really didn't. We just ran. They searched us, and I had some candy in my pocket, which they asked what I was holding. It was gummy bears. They let us go with a warning. I thought I was pretty stupid. Man, how terrible would it be if the cops were like, and we're going to take this under suspicious activity. Make sure that these gummies aren't filled with anything illegal. Yeah. All right, be on your way.
Guys, look, I just got free candy.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.